Yeah. So, again, the date is March 16th, 1994. We're going to do a whole episode on Vader, I'm sure, sometime. But this is not your first Vader match.
No.
I mean, this is probably match 100 or more. I mean, you had no telling how many matches with him. Did you guys have like a standard match? What we've often heard, from other folks who would say, and I think Jim Ross even tells a story on his podcast that he once heard Jack Briscoe and Harley Race talking about a match. Maybe it was Dory and Harley. But as they're getting dressed, they said, something like, should we do Chicago or New Orleans? Because they both knew, all right, this is the type of match we do there.
Yeah.
Did you have a routine like that with Vader?
The routine was Leon beats the hell out of me, and I fight for my life, for real. That's what it felt like. Leon called very realistic match as the heel, and he was free. I wrote this in Leon's book.
Underrated book, by the way. They did a good job.
Yeah, the guy did a good job, and I told him, "Wow, man, you must have really hung in there because Leon." Leon could be a handful.
Grumpy every now and again.
He could be grumpy, yeah. He could be grumpy, and so I thought the writer did a really good job in working with Leon, and they caught him at that time period where he only had the 2 years to live, and by the time the book came out, Leon wasn't with us anymore. So I wouldn't say that we had a match. There was a pattern to the match, which is he's going to basically, I have to try eventually to knock down this impenetrable wall.
Right.
So I said in the foreword that, man, nobody was a more convincing wall. And you could knock it down piece by piece if you were willing to work for it. And if you weren't, he was going to shut you down and eat you up. So it really forced me, because I'm not a naturally aggressive person, to turn that up a couple notches and fight from underneath. And then when the time was right, Leon would take bumps for me, and I loved working with him. I considered it like my Frazier Ali, especially when I did not think that I would ever reach heights. I did not think there'd be a WWE run.
You felt this is as good as it gets.
Yeah, and I felt like when I was in my big pay-per-view main event with him in October '93, I could tell by the way the show had been written moving forward that I wasn't part of the mix. So here's my last hurrah. So when I was in New Orleans doing my show, I talked about how I took, I was near the crowd by the guardrail. And back in the days before cell phone cameras, took somebody's very real camera and used it on Leon. And, when you use something like that up close, you got to bring it. So that thing was in pieces when I handed it back. Probably not the happiest guy in the world. I just ruined his quality camera. But then I wheeled around like this just with my head and scanned the crowd. And as I did that, section by section got on their feet and came alive. And I remember thinking, this is the height of my career, but also the lowest point of my career, because I will never reach this height again. That's the way I was thinking in that match. So I never thought that. I always felt in a way like the angle was booked to fail, or at least booked not to succeed, because he was already in the next program with Sid. There was no intangibles out there, but what if they tear the house down? And we had that horrible build, which was the Lost in Cleveland. So they Eric Bischoff mercifully pulled the plug on that like 8 weeks into a 12-week run, and then they just had me come out, and I acted like it had all been a swerve to get inside Leon's head, and we ended up having a great match. That's where I took the bump on his back, which was specifically designed to end my career. And I remember being so disappointed that it hadn't. And at the time, My Lloyd's of London wasn't like a major windfall. It may have seemed like it would have been like what I made for a year and a half. But I was so frustrated by the whole process that I did want out. What
was your backup plan?
I don't know if I had one at that time. We were living pretty frugally. We had a nice little house, but it was, nothing special. I don't know that I had a backup plan, Conrad.
You were just frustrated in that moment.
I was just so frustrated that this business that I had, given so much to, in some ways that had allowed me to live out my dreams, wasn't loving me back like I thought it should.